Welcome to another episode of The Morning After. I am your host, Jared Smith. It is the morning after nothing. A full moon in Vegas, a full moon everywhere. That is pretty much the only major sporting event that we saw take place yesterday. I know there was golf, college basketball, NBA announced their all-star games. I understand all of that was going on. But this is not that kind of podcast. I am not going to get up here every week and tell you all the things that are happening in sports and here's a recap of everything, because let's be honest, that's not why you're tuning into this. And that is not the purpose of this podcast. For those of you unaware, I'm a football guy. So this is kind of that transition period for me where I'll start to pay attention to college hoops and maybe some other things. But I am still very much in football mode for at least one more week, kind of in limbo as we get ready for Super Bowl 60. I will talk about the Super Bowl on this episode. We will get into some previews and some predictions for what we're going to see in Super Bowl 60. I'll give you the bets that I'm on. I know that's something that people always want to know. But this episode is going to be the first episode in this kind of transition period where I'm not recapping what happened in the NFL or college football. I'm not giving you this heavy slate of reactions to games and numbers and things that are happening in the betting world. This is going to be a little bit more topical, and this is going to kind of be, again, a transition episode into maybe some of the episodes that we're going to have in the spring and summer months, which is a little slower. A bit of an opportunity for me to breathe and get into some topics that I'm passionate about, and then you can hopefully react to it. And I always love hearing your feedback on how things are going and what you want me to cover here on the show. Again, this is not something, this is episode 21. So congratulations, the morning after can drink legally now in the States. But this is a very new entity for me. I am still very much figuring this out as I go. This is not a finished product. I don't know if it ever will be a finished product. It's like fashion. It's never finished. We just keep evolving and keep figuring out new ways to connect the dots of what's happening in sports to what's happening in my life. And then we bring all that together and we try to find a happy medium, and we try to have a little bit of fun, and we try to learn something along the way, right? That's always been the goal of this podcast, is for you to learn something through the lens of my view, my objective view of what's happening in sports. So I'll give you a little bit of that today. But I want to start with some personal stuff. For those of you that have been following me on social media, you know I just wrapped up a 72-hour fast last week. And I was shocked, absolutely shocked, at how much engagement that got on X compared to my average post about sports or betting or anything else, really. It really opened my eyes. First of all, I'll give you some details about the fast. It was a 72-hour fast from Sunday night to Wednesday night. It was a water fast. I did drink water with electrolytes. I had some bone broth. I had black coffee. I put this little powder in it that gives it some semblance of flavor with very little caloric content in it. Essentially, the way that my body works, and most bodies, everyone's body's different, but what I've learned about my body is as long as I keep it to under 50 calories, I am still in a fasted state. And so I do put just a little bit of again, this like powder, this organic coconut powder that does have some creatine and some collagen in it. And it just kind of nourishes the coffee a little bit. The bone broth is just your basic bone broth. Beef, chicken, really doesn't matter as long as it's got limited calories in it. I heat it up and I basically drink it out of a mug. And then the water is just water with electrolyte salt in it because electrolytes are very important. You have to stay hydrated during a water fast or else it's very intense. Like I have friends that do dry fasts and it's intense. I was surprised at how good I felt during the fast. So I've done a lot of 24-hour fasts before. So the first day I woke up Monday, very normal for me. I went to the gym. I came back from the gym around noon, 1 o'clock. And that's when my body was like, okay, usually at that point I do feed. My daily fasting routine is about 18 to 20 hours. So I'll start at 6 p.m. the night before and I'll fast until about 12, 1, maybe 2 o'clock the next day. And that's when my body is used to feeding. And then my feeding window is usually about 4 to 6 hours a day. So I pushed past that, and I felt okay Monday night. I coach youth football. I went to football practice that night, and I was running around with the kids. I felt okay. I woke up on Tuesday, and I was energized. Tuesday, I was actually shocked at how good I felt. I woke up on Tuesday. I went for a walk. I went to the gym, very light workout. I meditated. I do a meditation session at the gym. It's kind of like a yoga nidra for those familiar. And then I came home Tuesday night, and I felt energized. The clarity I felt mentally, I was locked in. However, on Tuesday night, that's when the physical fatigue did start to set in, right? We were 48 hours in. By 8 o'clock on Tuesday night, which was 50 hours into the fast, I was beat. I was like very drained physically. I went to bed. I woke up at midnight because my brain, again, was just like very wired, but my body physically was tired and I couldn't get back to sleep. I cleaned my kitchen. I did some work. It was like 2 a.m. And then I kind of drifted back to sleep around 5, 6 a.m. on Wednesday morning, woke up around 10 a.m., did my normal morning routine with the dog, and I did kind of do some meditation. I went for a walk, but I didn't really do anything very active on Wednesday, and it was a tough day. Like those last 8 to 10 hours or so from Wednesday at 10 a.m. until 6 p.m. when I broke the fast that night, it was very difficult. However, I did find a new level of discipline and spirituality, which might sound weird, that I didn't know that I had. What do I mean by discipline? I think you pretty much know what I mean. I thought for sure I was going to be much more physically, not ill, but famished. I didn't feel that at all. Physically, I was fine the last day. I was a little bit tired, but I felt okay. Mentally, though, I could not stop thinking about eating, which then, of course, made the clock go slower, and it just gave me a little bit difficulty with connecting to what I was doing that day. And, of course, I didn't get much sleep the night before, which obviously made my mental state a little bit more frazzled. The spirituality element came the last 3 hours. So the last 3 hours of the fast, I basically meditated the whole time and went for a long walk with my dog, alone, with no headphones, quiet in a park. And I felt a strong connection to God. I know that sounds crazy, but fasting is a big religious, like if you look up a lot of religious texts, Jesus, the Bible, all that stuff, fasting is a big part of it. And it brought me closer to God. It brought me closer to my own consciousness, my own spirituality, being so deprived of nutrients and food that it forced me to look inward. It was very powerful. The last 3 hours of that fast on Wednesday was very powerful. Hard to explain the feeling, almost like a warm bath for my cells. I just felt completely flushed out and cleaned out and very connected again with my inner spirituality, with my inner self. Really powerful. So powerful, in fact, that I have decided to do a 48-hour fast every week for the month of February. Why am I doing that? 2 reasons. A, I felt really good on the second day of the fast, right? The Tuesday of the fast. And I feel like I could do that every week. And I think the weight loss and the autophagy and the ketosis that I will put my body through will make me much healthier physically. But also, I turned 40 years old February 28th, the last day of February. I think it is a very powerful way to finish my 39th year on this planet. And it's a really cleansing way, I think, to enter my next decade. In addition, we are about to finish the year of the snake. I know I'm getting really deep in spirituality for you people, but listen, you listen to my podcast, you like me, I think you connect with me personally, so I feel comfortable sharing this. The year of the snake, right, if you're into the Chinese New Year and those kinds of symbols, the year of the snake is a heavy year. It's 2025, right? That was the year of the snake, and the Chinese New Year doesn't quite align with the our calendar. The Chinese New Year ends, I believe it's February 16th, February 17th. I might be off by a day or two, but it's not January 3rd. It's not January 1st. Like we're still in right now the year of the snake, even though 2025 is over and we're in 2026. We are still in the year of the snake technically for another 2 weeks or so. Well, the year of the snake is a very heavy shedding year. It's also the last year of a 9-year cycle. And 9 is also a very symbolic number in numerology. It's like the end of one sequence and the start of a new one. So we're in year 9, in the year of the snake. So there's just a heavy level of detox and shedding happening right now. And if you can feel that, if you actually close your mind or close your ego, shut your ego off for a second and try to look inward, do some meditation, you will probably feel a heavy, intense level of grief and detox and shedding that is happening right now. And I just felt like it was a perfect alignment for me to really push my body out of my comfort zone, not only to do a 72-hour fast once, but then to follow that up with a 48-hour fast 4 consecutive weeks up until my 40th birthday. There's just so much alignment there, and it felt like the right thing to do. So I am going to be sharing a lot of these experiences. That's the other part of this that I was blown away by. Not only how I felt during the fast, but the response I got on social media was very empowering. I post on social media a lot about sports, about betting, about my life. I have not gotten the level of response and engagement that I've gotten from fasting. The amount of people that have reached out to me, asking me questions, how did you do it? What do you do? What do you eat? What do you this? That? I'm blown away. I think it's actually so impactful how the response was publicly on social media that it has forced me to change my social media strategy. I am not going to be posting as much about sports over the foreseeable future. I'm going to be posting a lot more about fitness and fasting. And I think that is a strong path forward for me. I think a lot of it is the algorithm. I think sports betting is not as well received by the algorithm. Also, I can't post hot selfies, half naked pictures of me and get all this engagement. Like I have to post good content in order to get engagement. And I just think the algorithm doesn't like sports betting. It's a more saturated market. And also, it's a more narrow focus. More people are interested in lifestyle and fitness and how to lose weight and how to fast healthy and how to eat properly than they are about betting on sports. And I know we live in this sports bubble and we think that the world revolves around us, but in reality, sports betting, especially, maybe not sports, but sports betting is a very small subset of the grander content world. Even in the sports world, I think sports betting is, again, a little slice of it. And I believe that if I open up my content to include more lifestyle, more fitness, more fasting, I think I will attract a wider audience. So if you follow me on X and you notice me posting a lot more about these topics, it is a calculated plan for me to branch out into different worlds. I'm going to treat this podcast as such as well. I'm going to update you on my fasting process. I'm going to update you on my fitness journey. And for those, again, that have been following me for a long time, in the last 2 years, I've lost 40 pounds and have completely renovated my body. I mean, go look at some of the old pictures and some of the side-by-sides that I put up. I'm a completely different person now than I was in 2020, in 2021, and even in 2022. 23 is when I started this journey. It was actually May of 2023 is when I did my first intentional fast. And it's been almost 3 years since then. And you could see it in my face, my body, my abs, my ass, my biceps. I've lost significant weight, trimmed significant body fat, completely renovated what I put in my body. And the goal of fasting, to have full control over the relationship of the things you put in your mouth. I think that is a vital thing in today's society. I think a lot of people don't have that control and they let their mind take over their body. And then they put things in their mouth that harm their body. I'm not saying you have to eat healthy 100% of the time, but the ability to deny yourself nourishment with the intention of being healthy, I think is a powerful, powerful tool. I had one person respond and say, this doesn't sound healthy to fast for that long. Everyone's body is different. I'm not going to blanket statement this, but do some serious research about long-form fasting. It is, in my opinion, the sharpest and cheapest way to gain control over your health and your wellness. Because sometimes we eat subconscious, like we just eat. We see it on TV, McDonald's, Burger King on every corner, what they put in our food. We live in a very consumer, capitalistic society. Everything is for sale, including every ounce, every morsel of food that they want to sell you. It is all a cycle, and you can control it by just abstaining from eating. Try it for a day. You won't die if you don't eat for a day. I promise. You won't die, and you won't lose muscle. Again, I've been doing this now for almost 3 years, and I look fitter. My muscle mass has gone up. My body fat has gone down, and I have become a complete master of my body. Everything that goes into it is intentional. When I want to eat bad, it's intentional. I ate terrible the other day. I had pizza, blah, blah, blah. It's intentional. I have control over it all. And then I can go 2 hours or 2 days without eating, and it's not a problem. 72-hour fast. Strongly recommend looking into it. Not for the faint of heart. Gradually build up to it. I started with 12-hour fast. Then I went to 16. Then I did an 18. Then I did 24. And I'm Jewish, or at least I was brought up in a Jewish household. I'm not as Jewish now as I was back when I was younger, when I was growing up with my mom, and she was, her family's super religious. But we did, we fasted on Yom Kippur every year. So there's a lot of people out there, Jews, who fast for 24 hours every year. If you celebrate Ramadan, right? You fast every day for a month, and you eat in those the outside of the sun up to sundown windows, but you are learning discipline and control. I didn't realize it at the time, but those Yom Kippur fasts were kind of training me and prepping me for what I'm doing now. So once I got to the 24-hour fast, that's kind of where I stopped. I did 24-hour fasts at least once a month for like a year. And then recently I started to get the itch to do a 72. And I said, fuck it, I'm just going to do it. And I did it. I timed it to where I did it right after the championship games. I didn't have a whole lot going on this week. Super Bowl prep's a little bit slower. And I just knocked it out. 3 days. I went to bed in a fasted state 2 nights, woke up both nights. The last night, again, the sleep was a little bit rough. I kind of, went to sleep a little bit too early and my brain was wired. But I think the 48 are going to be not easy, but something that I can repeat. And I'm going to do the 48 every week for a month, and I'm going to see how I feel. I'm not going to commit to anything past that. I'm going to see how my body feels. I'm going to see how I look. I'm going to see what the metrics are. Take a blood test, right? I have this monthly blood test thing that I sign up for. I see what my markers are, see what my body fat percentage is, see what my muscle mass is, and then you just keep building. Honestly, I think in the society we live in now, where everything is designed to fuck with our brains, right? Social media is a cesspool. We turn on the TV, we're getting food, we're getting fast food, we're getting bad things, alcohol crammed down our throat all the time. Eat this, try this. You need to learn discipline and consistency. If you master those 2 things, you will be unstoppable, because it's all in here. It's all in your head. I know you're hungry. Trust me. I know what it feels like to be hungry. Hunger is an emotion. It comes and it goes. You drink some water with some salt, it'll slowly dissipate. But the problem is we get hungry and we immediately say, I need to eat, because that's what our bodies have been, that's how our brains have been programmed for years. We turn on the TV and we see Kellogg saying breakfast is the most important meal of the day. It's bullshit. You know who invented that slogan? Kellogg. The guy who owns the cereal company is the guy who's telling you breakfast is the most important meal of the day. Go look that up. It was like in some 1940s health magazine that they coined the phrase, breakfast is the most important meal of the day. It was the guy who owns Kellogg's. It really is remarkable when you dig deep under the food coma that they put us in. There's really not a whole lot that makes sense. In reality, we probably only need one meal a day. Our ancestors ate one meal a day, if they were lucky. They woke up in the morning, they hunted, they gathered, they came back to their little tent area, and then they made their one meal. And then they went to sleep, and then they woke up, and then they did it again. And they got by for years and years and years and years. And now here we are. God forbid we don't get our Frappuccino in the morning and our Dunkin' Donuts egg wrap, and you can't process the world properly if you don't put that in your system right away. I have not eaten breakfast in 2 years. And I don't even think about it anymore. I wake up, I have my morning coffee, I drink a shitload of water and minerals. I put a little salt and a hydrogen tab in my water every morning, and I feel energized. I don't even need coffee some days because I become so accustomed to this routine that I don't need to feed myself constantly. You need to give your insides a break. Your digestive system needs a break. Insulin goes down, energy goes up, your body starts feeding off of its fat stores, and that's how weight loss happens. That's how fat loss happens. That hunger you feel, that's called fat loss. It's churning inside of your body. It's your body feeding off of all the bad cells and all the crap that's in there. That's called autophagy. You get past 24 hours in a fast, your body will literally start cleaning itself out from the inside. Like I said, by the time I got to the third day, it felt like a warm bath for my cells. Everything was just getting cleaned out. It was wonderful. The mental clarity I felt was divine. New connection with spirit and nature and my consciousness. Strongly recommend looking into long-form fasting, and it's going to be a big part of my lifestyle going forward. And of course, I will share that with you as I continue my journey. All right, enough of that. I hope you enjoyed my long rant about fasting. Let's get into some sports topics. So there was a couple things I wanted to get to. I'll start in the NFL. The big story this week in the NFL, outside of the Super Bowl, right? And next week's kind of the big week for Super Bowl prep. The teams will start. You'll see this on Monday, Tuesday. Teams will start arriving in Santa Clara. Oh, my God, Sam Darnold's getting off the plane. And then media day and all this crap. We'll start to ramp up the Super Bowl intensity over the next few days. But it was kind of a week for the NFL. Like, there really wasn't a whole lot going on in terms of breaking news, except a couple of coaching hires. By the way, I do plan, I'm not going to do it yet because there's still a lot in flux, although I think now that we have the two, LaFleur in Arizona and Clint Kubiak in Vegas, all the head coaches are set. We're still going through some coordinators. But my plan for the coaching carousel, once we get past the Super Bowl and I can kind of breathe a little bit, once we get into March and free agency starts, I'm going to do a entire episode on just that. Coaching carousel, free agency. I'll rank some of the best hires. I'll give you a whole bunch of content just on the coaching carousel. But I'm going to let the dust settle. If you want more information about it, all the NFL beat writers are all writing about it right now. And we've kind of had a lot of news over the last month or so with new coaches and all that stuff. I'm going to let the dust settle. The way that I approach it is I write a preview about every team, all 32 teams, free agency, coaching carousel, recap from the season. And then I take that and I push that into my draft prep, and I use that recalibration of, I'll call it the front office grid, coaching grid, and then I'll use that as draft prep, as fodder for my, to see what these teams look like and what their philosophies are and what they might do in the draft. And then it's like the next step of it is the draft, and then the next step of that is the schedule release. So my offseason is kind of a 3-step process with the NFL. It's right after the Super Bowl, right? I give myself a week or two to kind of chill. And then usually first week of March, second week of March, when free agency's open and we get those big splash moves, that's when I will start to really put out coaching carousel, philosophy content. I'll do a bunch of write-ups. I just started a new Substack called the QB Read. Please subscribe to that, where it'll be quarterback focused, and I'll do some draft prep there as well. And I do a capsule on every team heading into the offseason. Once we get to the June, July months, I have basically a full page write-up. Sometimes it's 2 pages on every team's 2025 recap, what they did, coaching moves wise, what new staff, new philosophies are coming in, offensive coordinator, defensive coordinator, all that stuff, what they did in the draft, how it impacts their season, what their projections are, what my prediction is for them this season. I do a full write-up on all 32 teams. I will post all of those write-ups, and I will talk about all of them on the show through it. That's going to be a lot of the spring, summer, mostly summer content. Once we get into those really slow June, July months, I will do at least one show on all 32 teams, right? So I might do like 3 or 4 teams one week, then 3 or 4 teams that. Maybe we'll split up by divisions. I don't know. We'll figure that out in June. But I will get into all of that at the right time as my routine kind of moves forward. I'm not there yet. We still got a game left. We still have free agency. We still have the draft. I need all of that information. I will do a full draft show for you guys. I'll do some draft content separately, and I'll prep things. But the draft has become this like mess of misinformation. So it's harder for me to really gear up for the draft. There might be a few bets that I make. I had a losing draft last year, but I've had some really good drafts in the past. It's tough. Sometimes it's hit or miss. But again, I'm not at the off-season point in my process yet. I won't even get there next week. I won't reach that off-season point where I'm like really putting out 2026 content until probably mid to end March, after that first wave of March Madness. I do tend to focus on March Madness. And then once we get towards like the end of March, early April, that's when I shift back into NFL next season mode. So be patient. I'll give you all that stuff. I'll give you my thoughts on all the teams and what their coaching staffs are going to look like next year and how I think it's going to affect this guy and this and this. I'm not there yet. I won't be there for at least another month. But the big story this week in the NFL was this Bill Belichick stuff, where he did not get inducted into the Hall of Fame in the first ballot. Oh, man. Where do we even start? So I'll start here. He's a first ballot Hall of Famer. Period. End of story. There is no universe where he does not deserve to be a first ballot Hall of Famer. The reason that he was not inducted is his politics. So I think there was a strong contingent of people, including Bill Polian, who wanted to punish him for Spygate. My pushback to that is he was already punished for it, what the franchise was, and every other franchise was doing this for a long time. And then the NFL said you should stop doing it. And most of the other teams stopped, but Bill continued. So you want to say that he doesn't deserve to be a first ballot Hall of Famer for some, I don't even know what to call it, ex post facto punishment for Spygate? Okay, fine. But the reason that at least one of the people didn't vote for him is one of the dumbest reasons I've ever heard in my life. So Vahe Gregorian, I don't know, I can't pronounce his first name, Vahe Gregorian, of the Kansas City Star, right? That's the first part of this. There's 50 people who vote for the Hall of Fame. You have to get 40 votes to be inducted, right? You've got to have 80% of the vote. Bill had 39. So that means if this Vahe Gregorian guy would have voted for Bill, he would have gotten in first ballot. The reason that Gregorian said he wasn't or he didn't vote for Bill is because there were other people on the ballot who have been on the ballot for significantly longer periods of time who he felt deserved recognition, because if they don't vote for them now, they might never get in. So here's the quote. I felt duty-bound to vote for the richly deserving seniors who most likely won't ever have a hearing again as more senior candidates enter the pool and fresh cases get made for others. Meanwhile, Belichick is inevitable soon, as he should be. At the risk of contradicting my own vote, really, he shouldn't even have to wait. So essentially what this Gregorian guy is saying is Bill's going to get in no matter what. So my vote should be directed at lesser deserving people who might not get recognition if I don't vote for them in this cycle. It is the most ass backwards logic I've heard in a long time. Essentially what he's saying is, I'm going to vote for someone less deserving because if I don't vote for them, that person might not get in. That's not what the Hall of Fame is about. It's not the Hall of Great. It's not the Hall of Very Good. It's the Hall of Fame. Not everybody deserves to get in. It's not an insult if you don't get in. Also, I think we need to expand this vote to more than 50 people. That is a significantly small amount of people for what should be, I think, a widely cast ballot. I think we should have hundreds of people be voting for this. Because then if one guy decides, hey, you know what? I really think this person who is about to be off the ballot deserves his vote. Odds are it won't impact a guy like Bill Belichick, who, let's be honest, is the most deserving first ballot Hall of Famer, perhaps maybe in the history of the NFL, preventing him from getting in on the first ballot. Now, at the end of the day, is Bill going to get in? Yes, of course he's going to get in. He's definitely going to get in now after this whole fiasco. But we have lost the vision of the Hall of Fame. It is so political now, and it is so watered down that it really doesn't hold the same meaning as it did 25 years ago. And I think the politics of it have gotten out of hand. 11 people out of 50 did not vote for Bill Belichick to be a first ballot Hall of Famer. That's insane to me. I bet if you asked I won't say this because there's a lot of Patriot haters out there that probably vindictively would not vote for Belichick. If you asked a non-biased football fan, someone who's not a Patriots hater, is Bill Belichick a first ballot Hall of Famer? I bet the unanimous answer would be yes. I just don't see any other logical reason to keep him out. And he's not. So this will be a learning moment for the Hall of Fame. They even put out a statement about it, that they're going to look into the voting and all that stuff. And Bill's going to get in. And I'm sure that there will be a tweak to the voting rules next year. And Bill would have gotten in regardless. But this was definitely a learning moment for the Hall of Fame. And we need to seriously consider the people who are voting for this award. And we need to seriously consider the amount of people who are allowed to vote for it. I think 50 is way too few. I think we need more than 50. And also, when you have only 50 people, you can really put them into clumps, right? Bill Polian, for example, I don't know if this is true, but let's say Bill Polian went around and called every person, right? You only have to make 49 phone calls. You're one of them. You're 50 people. And lobby against Bill Belichick. In reality, you really only have to convince 9 other people. Because if you need, 10. If you need 40 votes to get in, that means you have to convince 11 people not to vote for you. I mean, that's a very small number of people that can be easily influenced. So I think, again, we need to open this voting up. It needs to be very transparent. You should not be able to hide behind an anonymous vote for the Hall of Fame. I'm sorry. You just shouldn't. Same thing with the Baseball Hall of Fame. We have the same issue in the Baseball Hall of Fame. You should not be able to hide behind an anonymous vote. If the guy who didn't vote for Mariano Rivera, first ballot Hall of Famer, that person should be known. Man or woman. So I think we really need to reform the voting process for the Hall of Fame. And I think this fiasco, will shine some light on it and we will get some change. Because, listen, I'm a Jets fan. Nobody hates Bill Belichick more than me. And I think he has completely run his career off the rails with the UNC stuff and the Jordan Hudson stuff. But objectively speaking, he's the greatest coach of all time. So I don't care how much I hate the guy because he tortured my team for years. He's a first ballot Hall of Famer. Any football fan with eyeballs can see that, except for Bill Polian and apparently this vague Gregorian guy who wants to vote for other people who are less deserving. Crazy process. I think we will get some reform. The other big story this week, and it was actually kind of a double-sided, double-edged sword, so to say. So we are really going off the rails with college sports. Actually, this is kind of a three-peat story. So the first part of this is Rutgers came out with their athletic budget for the last fiscal year. So they update, right? Rutgers is a state school, so they have to release their operating budget. Rutgers just reported a $78 million deficit for the 2024-25 academic year. This pushes the total deficit since joining the Big Ten in 2014 to $517 million. Let me repeat that for those in the back who didn't hear. Since joining the Big Ten about 10 years ago, Rutgers is over $500 million in debt. How do they pay for this debt? Well, it comes out of the university's general budget and the state budget, which means the New Jersey taxpayers are fronting the bill for the Rutgers athletic department's deficit. It's crazy. Oh, by the way, Rutgers gets a shit ton of money from the Big Ten and the TV deals, yet they still cannot make a dime, and they continue to operate in the red. College sports has gotten to a level that I could have never fathomed. And don't get me wrong, there's plenty of things on the New Jersey taxpayers' agenda that are not important. Things that probably shouldn't be paid for by taxpayers. Don't even get me started on the charities and the Somali daycare funds that Minnesota's taxpayers are paying and all this other shit, this red tape, this junk, this bloat, this froth that gets put on the average taxpayer's plate. But the fact that a university in one of the most prestigious conferences in the country that gets hundreds of millions of dollars from the TV deals and the bowl money and this and that and all these buckets of money that they pull from, they still cannot turn a profit. And they continue to operate in the red consistently to the point where we're talking about almost $1 billion deficit if this continues over the next few years. And I don't know how Rutgers individually fixes this. I really don't know if there's a path forward for them outside of leaving the Big Ten, which would obviously reduce their travel, reduce their spending, reduce a lot of other things. But college sports now is big business, major business. And I don't think every school is going to be able to fit the bill year in and year out. And I think you are going to see a lot of smaller schools really struggle and have to cut funding, right? Cut funding to other sports, cut funding in other areas to keep these athletic programs going. The NIL is getting insane, and they're going to have to keep outsourcing that money. For example, Utah just signed I think it was either $1 billion or almost $1 billion private equity deal to get an influx of capital, which on the surface sounds great. But then you're in bed with these private equity companies, which essentially means you're running a publicly traded company, and they're going to have to take that money back. At some point, you're going to have to pay them back the money you gave them or back the money they gave you. So we're getting into this high-level business structure in college sports that I don't think the average person realizes how twisted and dark of a path we're going down here, where bailout money is not far off. In fact, I would consider some of this private equity deal that some schools are getting in bed with these private equity companies. This is kind of a bailout. This is kind of the colleges saying we can't afford our budgets anymore with these insane line items, the travel, the NIL, the expenses. We need help. We need money. And don't even get me started on the coaches' buyout money, which was pushing $1 billion this year. I just think we're going down a very dangerous path with college sports. And then, oh, by the way, the NIL stuff is insane. Remember last week's show, I told you about the Clemson and Ole Miss stuff with Dabo and Pete Golding, and Pete Golding stealing one of Dabo's players, and Dabo's doing this press conference and basically doing like a legal proceeding about all the tampering that was going on. Well, now it's getting even more twisted. The Darian Mensah story is becoming crazy. So we kind of got a settlement on it this week, but Duke quarterback Darian Mensah, right? This is going to be his third stop. He was Tulane, then Duke, and he essentially said, I'm out. I want to leave. And Duke said, nah, you signed with us. We're suing you. That actually happened. Duke sued Darius Mensah. And then eventually there was a settlement. I don't know how much the settlement was for. But this is a significant sum of money, $4 million per year that he signed with Duke last season. And he wanted to leave because he was probably going to get more money from Miami. And Duke was like, no, we signed you to a contract. You have to stay. And so Duke sued him. I'm assuming they gave him some money up front or some kind of deal up front, and then he left. Again, I don't know the exact details of the lawsuit, but I know that it was finally settled this week, and now he's free to go wherever he wants. But again, we have gotten to the point in college sports where schools are suing the players. Again, wrap your head around that. The school is suing a player for leaving. Insane. Insane. By the way, Darian Mensah is going to be a great quarterback for Miami next year and maybe get Miami back to a national championship again. But the level of attrition that is taking place at these universities, trying to keep these players. They sign this contract, they play, and then they get more money to go elsewhere, and they just say, screw you, I'm leaving. And the reason that these players feel so empowered to leave is because there's no real rules in place to keep them there. Like, what's Duke going to do? Again, sue him? Okay, Miami's going to pay the buyout. So, to me, we need a commissioner of college sports. Desperately. Desperately. We need some kind of structure to this. Or else players are just going to keep hopping around and there is going to be no rhyme or reason to it. And I don't know where the buck stops. Because if Duke is not going to... It's crazy. I don't... Again, this is the highest level of it because Darian Mensah is a big-time quarterback. I'm sure this is happening a lot at the lower tier positions and lower tier players. I just don't know where it stops. Like, what can Duke really do? You're going to sue someone for a contract that really holds no weight? It's not going to hold up in a court, and that's why all of these lawsuits are probably going to get settled. But there's just a lot of shit going on behind the scenes. The quote that I saw that really stood out to me, a Power 4 general manager essentially said signed contracts mean nothing. So these kids are signing these deals to play at these schools. They're getting money from the school. They're getting money from the donors. Then they get a better offer somewhere else, and they just leave, despite the fact that they have a signed contract. Like, imagine signing a lease for an apartment that's like a 12-month lease, and after 2 months, you see an apartment on the market somewhere else that's a much better deal, and you just leave. And you just say, I'm not paying that rent. I'm getting a better deal over here. Now, in a real society, you're going to be liable for the original contract you signed. But in the NIL college sports world, you're not responsible for it. You can just go wherever you want. Signed contracts mean nothing. We need to get to a point in college sports where a signed contract actually means something. And to be fair, the coaches are doing this. They're jumping around all these different schools, buy out here, buy out there. We see it in the NFL all the time. But the players are at a disadvantage. And now they're finally getting some power because of the money that they're making, and they are empowered to leave and make more money. Hard to blame them, but we need some kind of responsibility structure in place to where if you sign a contract with a school, you are responsible to fill out the length of that contract. You can't just go bouncing around because Miami made you a better offer. It's really, it's a bad look for the sport. And we need some kind of structure. I have no idea what structure that is, but a commissioner would certainly help. The last college sports story I want to get to, this one's wild. So Amari Bailey played at UCLA, college basketball player. I think he's 21 years old. Went to the NBA. Played in the NBA. Played, I think, 10 games in the NBA. Things didn't work out. Well, now he wants to go back to college. You heard that right. A college basketball player left college, went to the NBA, played in the NBA as a professional. Now he wants to go back to college. He has eligibility left, right? He's only 21 years old. On the surface, it sounds like a great idea. It's a terrible idea. It's disgusting. Any college that looks at Amari Bailey and signs him to play needs to do a serious renovation of their program. What have we done to college sports? Like, what have we done to this level of amateurism? I remember in college, I wrote a paper about what is an amateur, and what defines an amateur. And money was a big part of it, but also having the mental clarity to play something professionally and do it as your job. And once you cross that line where I'm going down this path and I'm going to pursue this field professionally, and then you actually do it professionally, you can't go back. You can't become an amateur again. You can't put the toothpaste back in the tube. You can't put the genie back in the bottle. You are a professional. You have crossed that line. And I know that the lines are blurred now because of NIL, and these college athletes are still getting paid, but that is a different level of amateurism. They are getting paid for their name, image, and likeness. They are getting paid because the universities that they are employed at are making money off of their likeness and name. And they are now finally getting a piece of that pie. That is a different story than I am intentionally choosing to be a professional athlete in a professional league. And I'm crossing into that world. And I am employed in that world. But it didn't work out. I didn't like this situation. The coach didn't like, whatever the reason was that Amari Bailey and his professional NBA endeavor didn't work out. That should not empower you to go back to being an amateur. It's like insane. It's like it's insane. And I understand why he wants to do it, because there's money to be made playing basketball. But we need to, again, create some kind of boundary where if you sign a deal with a school, you have to stay at the school for that period of time. If you cross over into the world of the professional ranks, that is it. You have crossed over that threshold. You cannot go back to being an amateur and being a college athlete. So we need to enforce, first of all, we need to create boundaries. Then we need to enforce them. And right now, there are no boundaries. So these kids, again, feel empowered to just do whatever the fuck they want. But once we create the boundary, like in the Darian Mensah situation where he has a signed contract, we need to then enforce that boundary. And right now we have no boundaries and no enforcement of whatever loose boundaries that do exist. Essentially, it is the wild frickin' West. No rules. Do whatever you want. Go get that money. What did I say in the college football coaching search when I was talking about that dilemma? College sports is the love child of ballers and billions. All about the money. All about the swag. No morals, no ethics. It's a really difficult world that we are now trying to exist in. And again, I don't know what the right answer is. They don't pay me enough for that. But I do know we need some kind of governing body some kind of college sports Supreme Court, college sports commissioner to govern over these things. And if a school feels like they have been wronged, like Duke in the Darren Mensa situation, like Clemson with the Luke Farrelly situation, they should be able to appeal to that commissioner or court and say, here's my problem, rule. Yay or nay? I rule in favor of Duke. I rule in favor of Dabo Swinney. Like, we need some kind of governing body. We've gone so far off the deep end, I don't even know what is right anymore. But I do know that what's happening right now is wrong. And we've got to figure out a way to fix it. Because, we're doing the kids a disservice. We're doing the student athletes, we don't want to call them that anymore. We're doing these athletes a disservice. We are essentially saying, no rules, do whatever the fuck you want, no consequences, no boundaries, no accountability, no responsibility. That is a terrible lesson to be teaching a 20-year-old kid. That person needs to be held accountable for what they do. If you have zero accountability for your actions, that's where these kids feel invincible and they can go like what was his name? The Henry Ruggs situation, where he feels like he can drive 120 miles an hour down at 30, 45, 50, whatever the speed limit was in Vegas and kill someone with his car. Like, you get these kids that just feel so invincible because they've never been told no in their lives. Like, they're the best player on their Pee Wee team, then they're the best player on their high school team, and every single coach in the country is drooling over them, and they're never told no. And now we're starting to see the effects of this at the college level, where these kids just feel like they can do whatever the fuck they want, and they're never told no. No one ever pushes back. Boundaries, responsibility, accountability. These are things that will take you far in life. These kids don't realize it now because they're in their prime playing sports, but eventually they're not going to be an athlete anymore. And they're not going to be getting paid millions of dollars to play a kid's game. And they're going to have to earn a buck the hard way. These are lessons that will be valuable at that point in time. But if they've been basically gone through all of their lives, never been told no, can do whatever the hell they want, once they get to their 30th birthday and they're not playing sports professionally anymore, because most careers in professional sports, especially in football, last about 4 years, they are going to struggle. And I know that's not what they want to hear. They just want to be told yes and they can do whatever they want. But we need to start reining this in, because holy smokes, we're off the deep end. So Amari Bailey, Darren Mensa, like, get it together, man. Someone's got to tell these kids no. Someone's got to tell these kids that they need to be held accountable for their actions. But we are not at that point yet. Maybe we'll get there one day. All right, let's talk about some Super Bowl stuff. I wasn't really sure what I was going to do Super Bowl-wise for you guys here this week, but I will give you some notes. Let me pull up my notes for the game. I'll give you some notes that I think are valuable as we kind of push towards this week. So the first thing I'll say, and it's kind of over now, but slow down. You have time. That's my first tip for, how to prepare for a Super Bowl. Here's how I prepare for a Super Bowl. Slow down. You have time. Unlike the regular season where the Monday and Tuesday time after a Sunday of games, right? And you guys here on the show, if you listen to the show every week, it's like this process, right? We recap everything, we update our ratings, and then we immediately spin things forward to the next week. Like, it is just quick. You actually have time to breathe. Like, the regular season, you're drinking from a fire hose. And all of a sudden, it's the postseason. You go from 16 games to 6 games. And then it's 4. And then it's 2. And now it's 1. So you have time. This is the most unique prep of the entire season. Because the number opens, you get this initial wave, and then it's like nothing for like a week. This number's been sitting 4.5 and 45 for like the whole week. It hasn't moved an inch. And I don't think it's going to move at all until, I don't know, maybe later next week, like Thursday, Friday, Saturday, when the public really starts to wager heavily and the limits will expand. But I just don't see I'm not a professional bettor, so I don't feel the urge to I got to get this number right away. I like seeing what the market likes, what the market doesn't like, and then I like reacting to that. So slow down. You have time. There's a million props to bet on. And to me, that is a very different approach, different vibe than the regular season where it's like, I got to go right now. What's this number? What's this game? What's that? Slow down. You have time. Unders are your friend. So we know people love to bet overs. I get it. They're fun. You're rooting for something to happen. Psychologically, that feels much safer than rooting against something to happen. However, and we talk about this on the show all the time, when you bet an under, you start the game ahead. When you bet an over, you start behind. So it's a different mindset psychologically. Also, on average, there are significantly more props that come out for the Super Bowl than for any other game. Most people, again, like to bet the over, but most of the props actually stay under. Even though it sounds like this person really, oh, that's a really low total for this guy, most props tend to stay under. So the best strategy, and I've done this and I'll post this chart on Sunday before the game, the best strategy, and you kind of missed the boat here because the opening numbers are long gone. Look at every opening prop number when it opens. Usually it's Sunday or maybe Monday after the championship. And then write that number down that it opens at, and then wait until game day on Sunday, and then write what the number is on Sunday. And the numbers that have moved up considerably, bet the unders on those. Great strategy. I do it every year. Those aren't situational plays or like, I think this matchup favors this under. That is strictly a numbers game. Look at the opening number, make note of it, see which ones move the most up, and then come back on Sunday right before the game and slam the unders. And again, I will post that chart on Sunday before the game so you know how much each prop has moved. I use BetMGM as my, book that I track. Probably not the sharpest book, but I do work with them and I like to promote them when I can. So that's the book that I use. You want to use FanDuel, you want to use DraftKings, you want to use Circa, whatever. Doesn't matter. Circa doesn't lay as many props out there as some of the other shops. So I like to use one of the bigger box shops that just has a million props because you just, again, people just come in and they just slam the over, slam the over, slam the over. You compare those numbers to the opening number and then the number that closes right before kick. The numbers that move up the most, vulnerable to the under. My final piece of advice, don't bet big just because it's a big game. If you're saving the Super Bowl for your 20-unit max whale bet, you're doing it wrong. If you include the playoffs, the NFL season is 285 games, right? 272 regular, 13 post. All of them should be weighted equally in your mind. It is one game. If you see extreme value in one betting angle, yes, you should feel empowered to raise your unit size accordingly, but you shouldn't be making a larger wager just because it's the last game of the year and it's going to decide who wins the championship. That element should not factor into your risk management. And I talk about this all the time. It's easy to figure out what to bet on. That honestly isn't hard. There's a million angles to bet on. The hardest thing to do for me is to figure out how much I should be wagering on each individual bet. That, to me, the risk management, bankroll management element of gambling, discipline, consistency, those are the hardest things to wrap your head around, the hardest things to do. So keep an eye on that. There are some props that are very profitable. I posted a few charts about this. I'll go over them with you now. This is my favorite one that everyone's like, what is this bet? But it's very profitable. Will there be 3 unanswered scores in the game? I found this prop at minus 155. This prop has hit in 62% of Super Bowls over the last 25 years. And in your mind, you're like, well, wait a minute. If it's a blowout, maybe it hits. But what about if it's a low-scoring, close game? What are the odds that there are 3 consecutive scores by one team? Well, if you go back to that 2021 Super Bowl between the Rams and the Bengals, low-scoring game, 23-20 final, that game had 3 consecutive scores. How about we go back to 1999, Rams-Titans, Derek Mason falls short at the 1-yard line. Rams win 23-16. Yes, even in that Super Bowl, both teams at one point in the game had 3 consecutive scores. This prop hits more often than you think. And the reason why the pros love to bet it is because the average Joe is like, wait a minute, I'm getting plus money on no for 3 consecutive scores. That sounds too good to be true. You're on the losing side of that wager more than 60% of the time. So minus 155, that's the bet that I made over at BetMGM. Love that bet. The shortest touchdown. It's always lined at 1.5 yards. So essentially it's asking, will there be a 1-yard touchdown in the game? I always bet the yes on this prop for 2 reasons. 1, it's hit in over 62% of Super Bowls since 1999. And 2, it's just one of those props that the pros love to bet. Now, to be fair, my friend Steve Fezzik, the math doesn't agree with that prop in this particular Super Bowl. Why? The total is a little too low, right? The total's in the mid-40s, and Fez prefers the total to be 49 in order for this prop to be a bet. But I'm consistent. I bet it every Super Bowl, and I'm going to bet it again here, even though the math kind of disagrees with this one because the total is slightly lower than what he would want the total to be, right? Because a 49 total says 7 touchdowns. And if you're scoring 7 touchdowns or 6 touchdowns and 2 field goals in a game, the odds are 1 out of every 6 touchdowns is a shorty, a 1-yarder. So you need 6 solid touchdowns in a game to even consider this prop. We're kind of in the 5.5 range on touchdowns in this game. So that's where the math, again, is kind of on the fence. But I'm not a strict math guy. I'm a situational bettor. And this is a game that I always bet this prop. I love this prop. Under 1.5 yards for the shortest touchdown. The other staple prop bet that I bet every single Super Bowl, will the second half have more points than the first half? I always bet the yes. If you want to go 3-way here at BetMGM for minus 120 odds, you can bet the 3-way market. So essentially first half, second half plus OT, and then tie. We have had 1 tie in the last 26 Super Bowls. However, this prop is hitting at nearly 70% since 1999. 18-7-1, right? We had 1 tie. So in this case, if you bet the 3-way market, the tie would be a loss. It was the 2011 Super Bowl Giants-Patriots. There were 19 points in the first half and 19 points in the second half, which is a crazy number, but that was the number. But that was, again, an outlier. This is a very strong trend. The pros love betting this. If you want an alternative way to play this, first half under, second half over. But I'm just going to make it simple. Will the second half have more points than the first? Yes, minus 120. I also get overtime. I don't know if there's going to be overtime, but if there is, you can tack that on to the extra juice, the extra value you're getting with this bet. I don't have a ton of other props to share besides one angle that I really like, and that is Kenneth Walker's receiving yards prop. I love this bet to the over. If you recall, last week we hammered this prop against the Niners, and it cashed easily. Since Charbonnet went down with injury, Kenneth Walker has had a huge uptick in receiving yards and targets. In fact, let me pull up the numbers here so I can get you the exact number, because I gave this out on my Fox show on Saturday. So Walker in the playoffs is 13th in yards per route run amongst all players, receivers, tight ends. Yards per route run is one of the most predictive stats in figuring out how efficient you are as a receiver. Right? Because if you just went with strict yards, well, then Walker obviously would be lower than, a guy like JSN or an actual receiver or a tight end. But yards per route run. So when he runs a route, he gets the ball. He is 13th in that category during the playoffs. 2 games without Charbonnet. His uptick in receiving yards have been very strong. I think the Patriots are going to play a little bit softer than they did in the other postseason games. Like, that's the one thing about the Patriots that I noticed during this postseason run. So in the regular season, They were a 20% pressure rate, 25% blitz rate team. Those are kind of middle of the road, even below average metrics in blitz and pressure rate. In the playoffs, oh man, 54% pressure rate against the Broncos, 41% blitz rate. 40% blitz rate against the Texans, 44% pressure rate, 45% blitz rate against the Chargers, 68% pressure rate. They got to Justin Herbert in a big way. So the pushback against that is, well, Chargers, Texans, bad O-lines, bad weather. Broncos, good O-line, bad weather, backup quarterback. Typically, when you have those situations, you want to heat up the quarterback, make him make decisions quick, playing in front of a bad offensive line. Now you've got a solid, offensive line, solid quarterback, and good weather conditions, and a very dangerous offense. So the Patriots, who went very man-heavy against Denver, very blitz-heavy against Denver and LA and Houston, I think they're going to play a little bit softer here against Seattle. And I think that means more receptions and yards for the underneath guys. Also, the Patriots linebackers aren't great in coverage. That's the one weakness of their defense. The Patriots' strength of the defense is bookends. They're very good interior defensive line, and they're even better in the secondary. So I don't think they're going to attack Christian Gonzalez. I don't think they're going to attack the safeties. I think they're going to attack the intermediate level, which means screens, which means quick stuff, tight ends. I think A.J. Barner could have a big game. Kenneth Walker in the receiving game, I think, is going to be productive. I don't think JSN's going to have this explosive game. I think they're going to lock him down. I don't think Kenneth Walker is going to have a huge game on the ground. I think they are going to hem him in. The Patriots have been very good against the run this year. So I would go under on Walker's rushing prop, over on Walker's receiving prop. That's how I would play the Seahawks on their side of the ball. On the Patriots side of the ball, I don't know, man. Like, we've been waiting for Drake May to have one of them stinkers all playoff long, and he's kind of skated by with average performances because the defense has been so solid, and they've been fortunate that the weather and the other team's offenses have been so bad. I think Drake May has the potential to have a big game, but I'm not sure what we're going to get there. Kind of a mystery box. I would expect, right, Seattle plays a lot of zone, too high. I would expect Drake May's legs not to be a huge factor. His rushing yards prop right now is hovering in the mid to high 30s. If that thing keeps ticking up and up and up and up, and it probably will, because what did I say earlier? People love to bet the over. I would probably hit the under on Drake May's rushing yards prop. I think his first quarter passing yards prop, maybe for both quarterbacks this would work, I would go under. I think the first quarter is going to be a very slow, methodical quarter, as first quarters of Super Bowls typically are. And I think it's going to be a relatively tight game. Honestly, I think New England's got a chance to pull off the upset. I really do. Everyone's on Seattle. Everybody's on Seattle. I think New England's got a chance to pull off the upset. I really like what I've seen from Sam Darnold. He has shown an ability under pressure to make throws into tight windows. In fact, if you look up his adjusted accuracy rate under pressure this year, it is the highest of his entire career. So he has done a really good job renovating his ability to make throws under pressure. That's been the big bugaboo in his career. When the things get tight, that's when he breaks down. He turns into a pumpkin. He makes the boneheaded interception. He's limited that this year. He hasn't done it as frequently. Again, he has the highest adjusted accuracy rate of his career under pressure. Go back and watch the Rams game. 3 touchdown passes, all 3 of them in muddy pockets when facing pressure. So I think Sam has taken a step forward with his game. But I think this New England team is very well coached. I think their defense is very underrated. In fact, that's the part of this game that I don't think we're talking about enough. We're talking a lot about Sam Darnold. We're talking a lot about Drake May. We're obviously talking a lot about Mike Macdonald, who, by the way, is trying to become the first head coach ever to win a Super Bowl while being the defensive signal caller. That has never happened before. Not Belichick, not Landry, not Chuck Noll, none of those guys. They all had defensive coordinators calling the defensive signals. Mike Macdonald is trying to become the first coach ever to win a Super Bowl while calling the defensive signals. So we're talking about all of those units. Seahawks offense, Seahawks defense, Drake May, Patriots offense. We're not talking a lot about the Patriots defense. And I'll be honest, they've got kind of a spiritual edge in this game. What the fuck does that mean? So if you recall, their defensive coordinator, Tyra Williams, was diagnosed with prostate cancer the week before the season started. Huge loss. And thankfully, he was able to fully recover, and he has slowly integrated himself back into the fold. But for the first couple of months of the season, the Patriots linebackers coach, Zach Core, was calling the signals. Mike Vrabel also was part of the defensive game planning. So it is very fair to say that the Patriots defense, for pretty much the entire regular season, was kind of operating at less than peak capacity. When you lose your signal caller, your coordinator, right before the season starts to prostate cancer, that has an impact on your team. Well, guess who has come back into the mix for this playoff run? Tyra Williams. In fact, the team has been honoring him with T-Strong t-shirts. You see Vrabel wearing the ribbon on his game day vest. That is in honor of Tyra Williams. And here's Drake May last week, a quote on having Williams back in the locker room. Coach T, awesome seeing him around. Anytime he's around, he brings joy to us. He brings joy to the locker room. It's joy to see his face, to see how he's doing, praying for him, continuing to fight. What a story. It's been something for us to rally around and somebody to care about. So this is bigger than football, guys. This is one of those things that can absolutely galvanize a team when you are up against a David versus Goliath scenario. And make no mistake about it, the way this game is being billed, the way it's being priced, the Seahawks are kind of the Goliath here. So I think that's a sneaky edge for the Patriots in this game. Their defense, which has been playing lights out in the playoffs, very aggressive, blitzing significantly more than they did during the regular season, all of a sudden has this little chip on their shoulder with Tyra Williams, bringing back the joy, bringing back some of the fire to this Patriots defense. So if you want to talk about one side of the ball that maybe isn't being talked about enough, the Patriots defense might have a sneaky edge in this game. If they can create a turnover early and get inside Darnold's head, rally around Williams. I love the way that they can stop the run. I love the secondary. Gonzalez can shut down JSN. That's the path for the Patriots to win this game. I don't rule it out. Is Seattle the better team? Do they have the better roster? Absolutely. Have they played the tougher schedule in the best division? Absolutely. But you got to give the Patriots credit for being here. And you got to give their defense some credit because maybe their defense is a little bit undervalued. And that's the unit in this game that not everybody's talking about. So maybe New England can pull a rabbit out of their hat defensively and find a way to give Drake May a short field, get a lead, and then continue to drain the clock and kind of wring the life out of this game. I don't think the Patriots want to play a shootout in this game. I don't think they want to go toe for toe with Darnold and JSN and Walker and Cooper Kupp and Barner and all these guys. I think New England wants to play a 17-10 grinder and win it late on some kind of defensive play. That's the path for the Patriots. I think if this game gets into the 30s, I think Seattle wins handily. For example, Seattle to me correlates more with an over. New England to me correlates more with an under. That's just the way that I see the game. And again, Seattle does play a lot of zone, 75%, too high shell. Drake May's been pretty good against zone this year. So amongst quarterbacks with at least 100 attempts this season, Drake May is third in adjusted net yards per attempt, fourth in passer rating. Also, highest completion rate in the league, fourth highest catchable pass rate, lowest off-target throw percentage. When you are trying to throw into zone windows that are very tight, accuracy matters. Drake May was uncharacteristically inaccurate against the Broncos. I give him a free pass. The game was played in a freaking blizzard. It will be much more ideal conditions at Levi Stadium in Santa Clara. From what I'm hearing, no weather right now will impact the game. Perfect conditions in Santa Clara for this football game. So, again, that's another hidden edge maybe for New England in this game. Seattle's defense is being billed as a top-notch unit. I take nothing away from them. But Drake May has the ability to put the ball into tight windows. And he is the most accurate passer in the NFL this year. Wild. But the stats are the stats. So I'm not saying I'm picking New England to win. But if this thing gets to 5, 5.5, God forbid a 6, I'm going to be betting the Patriots in this game. I don't want to lay 4.5 with Seattle. I told you guys last week, I make the game 4. So does that mean I'm going to run to bet New England plus 4.5? No. Don't really have a strong interest there. 5.5? 6? Yeah. That's where I would be interested in betting the Patriots. Do I think it gets there? Probably not. My guess is 5 is probably the highest we get. But stranger things have happened. So I'm not ruling anything out. All right, this has been good. I like where we took this episode. I think a few other props for the game that I would consider, right? If you do like Seattle in the game, here's another way to play Seattle without having to lay points or a big money line price. So you can bet the Seahawks to have the most first downs in the game at minus 140. You can also bet on them to have the most offensive plays in the game at around the same price. That's kind of a correlated wager for them winning the game, right? Odds are, if they win or if they cover, they're probably going to have more plays and more first downs than the Patriots. So again, how can we bet on Seattle without having to actually bet on Seattle? That's an alternative. Another prop that I'm eyeing that I really like, that I haven't bet yet because I'm waiting on some news, Travion Henderson's under for his rushing yards. It is insanely low at 16.5. The reason that I haven't bet it yet, I am waiting to see if the Patriots activate their 2 backup running backs, Dearness Johnson or Terrell Jennings, off the practice squad. If they do that, it is an indicator to me that Henderson will get less carries than he was already slated to get. He only got 3 carries in the game against the Broncos. And that was when they had a lead and a positive game script. So I think New England doesn't fully trust Henderson right now. They've kind of fallen in and out of love with him throughout the course of the year. He's a rookie, not great in pass pro, kind of rough around the edges in some of those polished areas they want a running back to be polished in, like, again, ball security, pass protection. So I don't know how much run he's going to get in the Super Bowl. Also, if they're behind, they're going to have to throw. And so the running back rushing props, not as valuable to me to the over for New England. However, I do think Ramondre Stevenson's going to be a big factor in the game. Rushing, receiving, the whole 9 yards. He's got to have a big game in order for New England to be in this. But Travion Henderson, I don't think he is going to be a factor much at all. So I would look to bet the under on his rushing prop. But that's it. That's all I got for you. I kind of emptied the clip here. All of my notes, all of my angles, everything I feel might be a factor in the game. I think Seattle wins. I think it's a low-scoring game, but I think New England is very live. For the purposes of this show and this prediction, right, we're not going to do another episode before the Super Bowl. I will come back next Sunday night and recap the Super Bowl. We'll have the morning after the Super Bowl for sure. But I'll give you my final score prediction right now. Seahawks 20, Patriots 17. I'm going to thread the needle. Seattle wins, New England covers, game stays under. I think that's what the sports books will need. From everything I hear, it's a lot of Seattle spread, New England money line, and over money, obviously. So I'm going to flip that, right? We're going to go against what the public is trying to do here. We'll go New England spread, Seattle money line, game under. Seahawks 20, Patriots 17. We tip our cap one last time to Sam Darnold, one of the most amazing quarterback turnarounds in recent memory. My first article, my debut article for the QB Read, my new Substack, is about Sam Darnold. I did a film study. I told a story through his lens and the remarkable journey he's taken from being drafted by the Jets, going through Carolina, San Francisco, Minnesota, and now Seattle. Just, again, an amazing story of overcoming adversity and just basically being cast aside as you're a bust and now one step away from football immortality. Hope you enjoyed the show. Please like and subscribe to the YouTube channel. I've got a ton of different ways for you to interact with the content, right? You've got YouTube, you got Spotify, Apple, anywhere you get your podcasts. You can listen to The Morning After. I've got a Patreon where I post all of my bets. Please subscribe to that. You can sign up for free, and you can also pay to get the full package. But I do post some free stuff there, but most of it is behind a paywall. That's where I post all my bets. And then the Substack, which is brand new and 100% free, that is where I post all of my long-form football analysis with quarterback-centric storytelling, film study, all that stuff. If you're a football freak, you're going to love it. The QB Read headed to Substack. Check that out, please. Don't forget, like this video before you head out. Subscribe to the channel. Tell your friends. We'll be back next week to recap the Super Bowl on The Morning After.